Hello, I'm Earl Weinberg, and this is Book Circle Presents An Ever-Mounted Cavalry. One of our protagonists, Ivy, who is 14 and no more, has been left by circumstances alone in the house after her hostess and the hostess's companions have left. This is a lot to take in when you've been soaked in adventure for the previous day, and so she decides she'd rather spend the night in the garage with Brother Eugene. Horses don't sleep much. Old men don't sleep much. Old man horses sleep very little, but he did sleep some and dozed more. He put the book down, choked the lantern down to the least gleam, leaned as far back as his human spine would recline, folded his arms, and closed his eyes. Some unmeasured time later, he woke frowning. What was amiss? Oh. He cleared his throat, making sure the sound rumbled into his equine rib cage. Ivy? Ivy? Do you smell smoke? After Ivy struggled awake, Brother Eugene repeated the question. Do you smell smoke? Maybe. Yes, I think I do. A sniff. Yes, definitely. Brother Eugene did not want Ivy caught in the wallowing and thrashing it would take him to get up. Ivy, if you could... Before he could say more, she was on her feet and at the window by the door. Brother Eugene, she exclaimed sotto voce, there are lights in the house, not flames, lights. Brother Eugene, now up, started to clatter toward the window, but checked himself and came slowly, putting his hooves down gently and quietly. He looked out. Dim light showed in the windows of the house, changing slowly and purposefully. He gazed in alarm for a few seconds, then said, But this is very odd. Why set fire to a house before you burgle it? Shouldn't Melissa and the other bee fairies be on guard? Ivy asked. We didn't specifically ask. Oh, the smoke! The burglars have smoked the bees. Smoke puts bees to sleep. Each of them fell silent, thinking furiously. Eugene spoke first. That means these burglars know the bees are fairies. At least they know they are special, magical. So the burglars are sundered. Either Ahnenerbe or Greenwood, I suppose. Ahnenerbe is Nazis, right? Yes. What's Greenwood? A secret service in the British government. They're sundered, at least sort of. They're to protect the British government from magical threats. They don't like us, Grand Normandy. We're no threat, but they don't always believe that. And anyway, we just ignore things like their smuggling laws. They might think Miss Blackholt is drug dealing or on the black market. But I'm afraid it's likelier to be Ahnenerbe. We have to wake up the bees. How? Let in fresh air, take the tops off the hives. And she started toward the door. Ivy! But she was out in the night. Technically, she heard Brother Eugene, but it didn't register. Fortunately, the beehives were painted white, and so were at least faintly visible. As she approached, the smoky smell increased. She located the entrance to the nearest hive by memory and then felt about. Because she was expecting it, she did not burn her fingers on the smoker, but felt the heat first and lightly traced its shape with fingertips. It was a thing like a crude metal teapot with a smoldering coal in it, plus pine needles from the smell of it, creating the smoke. She located the handle and moved it away from the hive entrance. She repeated the process with the other 3 hives. Miss Blackholt had a smoker, but only one. Whoever the intruders were had obtained their own. Then she started taking the tops off. The honey smell rolled out along with the murmuring of the bees. What was it the Grand Normans said in greeting to the Fays? Oh, yes. Return and we return, she said softly. The murmuring went on. She lifted the tops and called on the other 3 hives. On the last hive, frustrated with the lack of response, she said the greeting twice more with rising urgency and added the second line like a malediction. "Keep faith, and so do we." "What? Who's that?" said a voice from inside the hive, small and far, but sounding quite human. Sleepy, too. "Ivy, there's burglars!" All this delivered at low volume, though her tones were intense. "Ivy, come now!" called Brother Eugene, likewise low and intense. She saw he had followed her out. White coat and light gray jacket made him almost as pale as the hives. He sank as she approached, and for a frightful moment she thought he was collapsing. Then she saw he was only kneeling for her to mount, as she had this morning, only this morning, for her first ride on Centaur back. As she closed to climb on, she saw he had a pistol in his hand, pointed at the door of the house. He wore a backpack. She used it to hold on as he rose. Then he headed up the drive, almost soundlessly. Once out of the drive, he accelerated at the cost of a little more noise. "Open the backpack," he told her, still speaking low. "It has my glamour scarf in it. Hand it to me." He holstered the gun and held his hand over his shoulder. After a little fumbling, she extracted the scarf and handed it to him. Soon, the phantom image of Brother Eugene was riding between her and him. They neared the village green and picked up more speed. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Mainly, we are going away, and we are taking her papers. I've got them in the backpack. We will keep them out of enemy hands. When it gets light, we will stop at the first place that has a phone, and you will go in and call the vanguard. Or maybe we both will. I have some seeming potion in the backpack, too. Anyway, we will call the vanguard, then keep going. We are headed for Upham, the town with the cavalry base. It would be a very long ride to get there, but I'm really headed that way, so we have the best chance of meeting the vanguard coming the other way." By now they were out of town. He was speaking normally, even a little loudly, to be heard over the drumming of his own hooves. He stumbled a little. Damn. Run became canter, trot, walk, halt. He crouched. Ivy got off. "Ivy, please help me take off these bags." "What bags?" "On my hooves." She could just see that he held out a foreleg. She reached for the hoof and felt burlap. "I muffled my hooves. There were some old burlap bags in the corner of the garage. I noticed them some time back. They did help, but they're a nuisance now. If you could get the ones on the hind legs?" Ivy complied, wondering how he had got bags on his hind legs in the first place. "Throw them away or keep them?" she asked. "We'll keep them. Who knows what situation we may find ourselves in. Put them in the backpack, and there's an electric torch in there. Get it out, please. We had to run in the dark in town, but now that's just another nuisance." Soon they were running in the dark again, this time with Ivy holding the torch for Brother Eugene. This meant she had one less hand to hold on to the backpack. "How do I keep from bouncing off?" she asked. "Grip with your knees as hard as you like. I'll barely feel it. If we had a saddle, you'd have stirrups, but we don't." Soon, Ivy decided it was not a matter of seeing how hard she could grip with her knees, but how little gripping she could get away with. Her legs were starting to ache. In his human days, Brother Eugene must have had legs like iron. She supposed all cavalry officers did. After a few minutes, he dropped from running to trotting, and Ivy felt she could relax some. In the dark, Ivy had no way to tell how far they had come, but she knew she could never have run for so long, not even with breaks for trotting. "How long can you go on this way?" she asked, wonder in her voice. He chuckled. She heard pride in it. "I can't give you a number, but a fair while yet. This is what horses are for, one of the things. And I was in pretty good shape for an old man, so I'm in pretty good shape for an old centaur." "Are you an old centaur? I mean, you've only been a centaur for a few months." "Well, yes. I know horses well enough to tell that as a horse I'm physically old. Hale, but old. I've been looking into how transformation spells work, naturally enough, and they leave alone any features that aren't in the script, so to speak. A red-haired man becomes a chestnut centaur. An old man becomes an old centaur with a white coat to match his hair and beard, and so on. Of course, that doesn't explain why some of them came out with white markings, or even as paints. On they went, run, trot, run, trot. Ivy asked Brother Eugene to take off the glamour scarf. Seeing their way was hard enough in the dark, and the layer of translucent images that came with the illusion made keeping her eyes open nearly pointless. So they kept it folded up in Ivy's lap, handy. Weary and short on sleep, Ivy fell into a half-dream. How strange it was, riding a friendly monster through the dark, an enemy behind them. The torch showed the country road was lined with hedgerows. The effect was of a dark tunnel with no end in sight. She recalled the dwarven tunnel through the mountain to the Chaos Sea that Brother Eugene had described. But it had been lit. It was no longer run, trot, but trot, walk, trot, walk. Ivy was just as glad. She didn't bother to grip with her knees when he walked. For that matter, she was not sure how much grip she was able to summon on the trot. Her legs ached abominably. "May we have a rest soon?" she begged. "Wouldn't mind," Brother Eugene answered shortly, puffing the answer. There was a funny rumble in his voice that Ivy supposed came from speaking with panting horse lungs behind the human ones. He stayed at a brisk walk now, no longer trotting. He was looking for some place more secluded than the open roadside to rest in. Ah, here. On their right, there was a break in the hedgerows where a drive met the road. Brother Eugene turned in, moved to the side of the drive just behind the hedgerows, and stopped. Ivy slid off. He lay down, trying not to make it look too much like a collapse. He lay with his human trunk upright, legs under him as he had when he was reading in the garage. Ivy snuggled into the same position against his ribs. He spread the glamour scarf over her, reflecting on how mundane a use this was for a heavily enchanted object. He wondered if she would go to sleep. She tried, but did not. "What's that hissing sound?" she asked. Brother Eugene cocked his head and listened. He caught the sound. It was faint but increasing. "It's coming down the road," he said softly. He listened a few seconds longer. "Tires, I think, but no engine noise. So something magic. If it is tires, probably." Things had come to a very strange pass, Ivy reflected, when magic was the probable explanation for something. They waited, listening to the hiss get louder. The sound peaked, and something whisked by the end of the drive. The sound diminished. After a while, Brother Eugene said, "That was not a car." "I think it was a bicycle," said Ivy. "I think it was about the right size. It's so hard to see." Cautiously, weariness forgotten, they tiptoed back to the road and looked down it after the speeding mystery. They saw nothing. Not a car, Brother Eugene reflected. A bicycle, let us say, but moving as fast as a car in a hurry, and with no lights. "Could it have been a motorcycle?" Ivy asked, "with a magically silenced engine? Because I smell fumes." Brother Eugene agreed that the cyclist certainly left a distinctive odor. "I don't think it smells like motor fumes, though. Still, something automotive." He looked along the road into the darkness their pursuer had vanished into. He sighed long and deep. "Let's go back and rest. There's hardly any call to go hurrying after the party we were running from." Soon they were back behind the hedgerow. Ivy curled up under the glamour cloth again, but did not relax. Brother Eugene forced his strange new array of muscles to untense, but was not really at ease either. As fast as a race car, he reflected, but no bigger than a motorcycle or bicycle, and silent but for the tires. Clearly magical. And smelly. Smelly magic is often alchemy. What does that mean? Alchemy is magical chemistry. No, I mean, what does that tell us about the cyclist? Brother Eugene grunted. Nothing useful that I can see. Miss Blackholt might know more. We must tell her these details when we see her. They sat in the dark. Ivy curled up into a hard knot under the big scarf and tried to think of nothing. Brother Eugene tried to think of what to do next. Perhaps wait for light, put on the glamour scarf, then continue down the road looking for a place with a phone. Then continue toward Upham, unless the Vanguard— There it is again, said Ivy. Brother Eugene started to ask what, then heard the hiss of tires once more. Why's he coming back? Ivy asked in a plaintive whisper. We must assume he is looking for us. Maybe he was following our scent, or dowsing for us, or something informed him. It doesn't matter. He heaved himself up and drew his pistol. Go further up the hedgerow. I think there's a place that bulges out some. You can hide there. What about you? I can't hide. Reluctantly, Ivy started into the dark. She came back. Can I borrow your sword? Ivy, what possible— He broke off and handed her his cavalry saber. He watched the pale blot of her nightdress diminish into the dark, then go into eclipse behind the shrubbery. But it wasn't the patch he had meant. It was far too close. He was about to call to her when he noticed the tire noise had stopped. He trained his cavalry revolver on the entrance to the drive. Should he try to shoot to disable? Was there danger of shooting an ally or an innocent? It seemed very unlikely. They were hunting him in the dark. He heard nothing. The road was paved. Rubber soles, stockings, or bare feet would be silent. Would gravel in the drive crunch? Then he remembered the drive was dirt. He saw nothing. He thought about eye drops for night vision, as he had often thought since they fled. He knew Miss Blackholt had some. He knew just the shelf in her house where the little bottles stood, neatly labeled. But he had had no thought but to comfort an anxious child when the night began. Somewhere above the clouds, a crescent moon set down a trickle of light that let him see things like Ivy's white nightdress. How cold the child must be. But the darkness before him was featureless, except for shapeless black clots that could be anything. Well, these clots must just be the bushes of the hedgerow. Something in the dark clicked. Put down your gun, a voice commanded. Where are the papers? Where is the child? The papers, devil take it, were in the backpack at his feet, but they were far less important than Ivy. Why do you want the child? Brother Eugene asked. Guided by the voice, he now guessed which black clot was their pursuer, but he carefully did not face him or point his gun at him. For interrogation, of course. The voice had virtually no accent. No doubt he could leave it behind entirely when he bothered, which was not now. I know she is near. I can smell her. But she is secondary. Tell me where she is, save me the trouble of hunting for her, and I will shoot you in the head, a painless death. Otherwise I will shoot your gun hand and one or two of your legs, catch the girl, and finish you off at leisure. If you— Silent as moonlight, Ivy stepped out behind him. Before the step was finished, she threw the saber at him. Before the saber was well launched, informed by they never knew what clue, he wheeled toward her. Before he could face her, Brother Eugene shot. Ivy gasped. Ivy, are you hurt? Brother Eugene cried. No, is he dead? He could not help noting the hopeful tone. He did not answer. No one else spoke either. Finally, Brother Eugene fumbled his way to the backpack and extracted the torch. He played it over the grass around Ivy's feet. There was the saber, thrown well wide of the mark, but still to good purpose. And there lay a figure, all in black, looking faceless, with a knit cap pulled all the way down to his chin. He did not breathe. But there was a faint sound, a hiss. Those damn tires still. He's frying, Ivy exclaimed. Brother Eugene scanned the beam over the body. There was a darker patch against the black cloth on the side. He thought the hissing noise came from there. As he watched, the black patch began to bubble. "The smell is getting worse," Ivy remarked. "It's like burning meat and car engines. Is this alchemy?" "I think so. At least I think that's part of it." The dark bubbling patch was widening. "Ivy, we should go. If anyone heard my shot and investigated—" He trailed off. Ivy voiced his thought. "If I were the farmer here and heard a shot, I think I'd lock all the doors and stay up all night with my rabbit rifle if I had one. Then when morning came, I would think about investigating." "I suppose. Or maybe he's used to hearing poachers in the woods from time to time. Still, we ought to leave." The smell was rising, and the black patch, the hole, he was fairly sure, was widening and bubbling at the edges. He retrieved the backpack and crouched down for Ivy to climb on. He wrapped her in the glamour silk, which therefore remained inactive, but helped keep her warm. Then they were on the road again, leaving the remains in the dark, to bubble and hiss and recover. Brother Eugene considered the abstract possibility, but did not feel anxious about it. He thought it likelier any inquisitive farmer would find a black patch where the grass would not grow for many years. There were things like boots and belt buckles to consider. Well, that was the Sundering's problem. Of course, the best thing, both in terms of staying on the good side of the Sundering and in terms of military intelligence, was to have the vanguard or the majory come and pick up the leftovers. He resolved to keep a lookout for landmarks as well as he could. At present, though, there was only the dark, featureless road. Trudging through the dark, feeling all your years piling up on you in an unfamiliar body, with a child in your care, this went on for far too long. "Brother Eugene, what time is it?" "I'm sorry, Ivy, I don't know. My watch is on my bedside table back home." "Do you want to try resting again?" He nodded. Could Ivy see that, or feel it? But said, "We should find another place to hide, though." He laughed weakly. Did he sound a bit hysterical? "But without so many German spies." Ivy answered with a dark giggle that made him wonder if he should regret his little joke. Hiding places might be all around them. It was too dark to see. Pull out the torch? He debated this internally. After a bit, he realized that the old soldier's trick of sleeping as you marched had carried over to the new set of legs. Well, he certainly hadn't noticed any hiding places while sleepwalking, and Ivy was hanging onto the backpack inertly. She was probably asleep in the saddle. No, he had no saddle. He roused from another walking doze. Why? Oh, no, not tires again. This time, at least, there was also engine noise. Adrenaline jolted through him. He stumbled over to the left side of the road and reached around to pull the glamour silk off Ivy. She was muttering and whimpering as she woke. The car noise increased. Still no lights. By now, people forced to drive through the blackout at least had little slitted covers over their cars' headlamps, but these folk were rigorously dark. People who could drive in total darkness and coming from behind, from Oswick. Bad signs. "Ivy," he barked, "get off! I'm going to try and push through the hedgerow. You follow me." "What?" He didn't wait for her to get off, but started pushing. His arms flailed in the dark, tangling in thin branches. Was the road still banked by hedgerows here? The sounds of tires and engine came rushing up now. He started groping for his revolver. The tires stilled. The engine purred right next to him. "Frère Eugene Dirichlet, est-ce you been?" asked a voice in Chenelaise. "Brother Eugene Dirichlet, are you all right?" "Hormforschung cet arbre." Why are you fighting that bush? Brother Eugene wanted to laugh and fall down and float away all at once. "Because I cannot see what I am doing," he answered in Chenelaise. He twisted head and waist and saw gleams of light from the dashboard. He began the labor of turning around on 4 legs. "What if I said, 'No, I am not Clay, you have the wrong centaur'?" A chuckle answered him. Ivy stirred. "Brother Eugene, are they Vanguard?" "Yes, Ivy, they are." "Yes, miss," the voice seconded in English. "Are you Ivy Treadwell?" "Yes, did you catch them?" "We caught one." "We caught another," said Brother Eugene, now finished turning around. "Or he tried to catch us, and it went badly for him." "Indeed, where was this?" Brother Eugene could now see a dim figure in each front seat. Something stirred in the back. "Back along the road, on a drive on the left as you head toward Oswick." You're coming from Oswick. Oh, of course, you caught another, but I thought you'd be coming from Upham to Oswick." "We already did that, as fast as ever we could, which meant using some old paths that cars don't usually use." "Ah. Now, can you show us the place where you encountered this other Ahnenerbe agent? I'm sorry to make you walk all that way back, but we have no means—" "No, wait, I have some of Miss Blackholt's handiwork with me. Ivy, dear, get down and get in the car." He sank into the roadside bracken so she could dismount. "I'll be with you in a minute." The driver, who was the speaker, got out and opened a back door for her. She slid into it. It felt like heaven. Cuddling up to Brother Eugene's flank for comfort was one thing. Riding on his spine while trying to grip with your knees was quite another. Only after she was in did she notice that she shared the seat with a large Alsatian dog. He grinned at her and panted amiably in her face. "That's Procyon," said the man in the passenger seat, speaking for the first time. He turned to smile at Ivy. What she could see of his expression in the dim light looked as relaxed and open as the dog's. "He's my partner. I'm Lieutenant Friulano." He snaked a hand over the back of the seat to shake with her. "He smelled out which way you and Brother Eugene went." "I see. Italian name. Works with dogs." "Benandante?" she asked Lieutenant Friulano. He grinned wider. "Yes, indeed, and you heard about us just today from what I was told." "Yes, it was one of the nicer parts. It's been quite a day." He laughed. "I suppose you could have smelled our track without Procyon? Yes, but not and hold a gun at the same time." And we will leave Ivy there in the care of 2 Vanguard agents, not to mention Brother Eugene, and return next time.